her policy positions in the past have been absolutely patently absurd. We're talking about something who wants to take money out of hardworking Americans' pockets and pay for illegals to get sex changes, federal prisoners to get sex changes, to adopt things like Tim Walz did in Minnesota, where they put tampons in boys' bathrooms. We're talking about a misuse of funds, of what I would argue is really transnational fraud. And we've seen this year over year from the Democrats. We need to tell the story and define them.
All right, guys, good Friday to you. I hope you had a good week. We're cruising into the weekend here. Another beautiful weekend on tap right now. We've got 53 days until the election. It's getting a little close. Early voting is kicking in. This is like a big deal. I was fascinated by the fact that culture did not come up at the debate. It was on the heels, remember, of that CNN K-file story about how she wanted to use tax dollars, our money, to pay for the transitioning of people entering the country illegally. Who the hell thinks that's a good idea? I mean, there's so many issues on culture that could have been brought up, but not one, because ABC did their best to hide that. They didn't want that. They knew that wouldn't help her. It would hurt her. And they knew it would play into Donald Trump's strengths. So they covered for her. But I started thinking about it because we on the right have actually started to have some big wins on the culture front. Mostly because we expose what's going on. And I want to talk to you about that today. We're learning to fight back effectively. It's not just about elections, because with the exception of Donald Trump, a lot of our elected officials are cowards and won't do it. So how are we having effective campaigns in society and pushing back? And I want to talk about that. I think I mentioned to you on Monday night, talk about a long week. I flew to Nashville, went to the premiere of the movie, Am I Racist? The Matt Walsh Daily Wire movie. It's a must-see. We're going to have Matt on the film in a second.
And what you're doing is you're stretching out of your whiteness. This is more for you and less for you. White.
Folks.
White.
Trash. White supremacy.
White woman. White boy.
White.
Entitlement.
White.
Centering. White. Silence.
Is there a black person around here?
There's a black person right here. Does he not exist?
They gonna say I'm racist, but they call everybody racist.
Hi, Robin.
Hi. And what's your name?
I'm Matt.
Matt. Hi,
Yeah.
Matt.
Nice to meet you.
I just had to ask who you are because you have to be careful.
I want to show you a couple quick photos. This is Jeremy Boring, their CEO, standing talking about how many theaters this is going to be. But this is part of the point. Exposing this reality. And I don't want to give away too much of the movie, except just to tell you to go see it. It was unbelievable because they exposed the ridiculousness of the left's arguments. And that's what I want to tell you about today, because we are winning and we don't know it. When you watch this, and I'm telling you, go see the movie, because it's not just a great movie. It's actually very entertaining as well, but it's so instructive. And I think it's worth going. And that was kind of the point that I made to the press that was there. Now, granted, it was all right-leaning press because none of the mainstream media wanted to cover it. All right, I want to get into this a little bit more, but I want to talk to you. If you are running a company, if you're the person that's hiring people, if you're managing expenses, I want to tell you about Ramp. Okay, this is a Ramp card. You see it says Visa at the top. This is just like a normal credit card, right? And if you are that person who handles the expenses and the finances for your company, then you need to listen to this, not because it's actually a sweet deal for you too. Ramp is the corporate card and expense management system that is going to be a game changer for you. It is designed to save you time and money, create unbelievable efficiencies. It avoids you chasing receipts and setting limits. It gives you an unbelievable ability to track your employees' expenses, to set limits, to set places, to account for all of this stuff. You can issue cards like this to your employees with individual targets and restrictions and all sorts of stuff. So it takes all the guesswork out. It is unbelievable. One of the guests that was on the show a couple months back said he changed over to Ramp and it completely changed the way that they did business and saved him a ton of time. You're not going to be spending time chasing down receipts and hours doing your expense reports ever again with Ramp. It's easy to use, easy to get started. You get these physical cards like I showed you. It's just like any other Visa card. It's amazing. And here's the kicker. You get $250, $250 when you join Ramp. Just go to ramp.com/Spicer, ramp.com/Spicer. $250 just for signing up. Where else in the Biden economy are you going to get that? Remember, cards are issued by Sutton Bank and Celtic Bank, members FDIC. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, before I go any further, next week, write this down. Glenn Beck's going to be here. Trish Regan's going to be here. Gene Hamilton is going to be here. He's with Stephen Miller's outfit, America First Legal, and they're going to give us some unbelievable insight Monday on what they're doing and I got to be careful because of the algorithms here, but let's just say it rhymes with moding and boating, and we're going to be doing it on November 5th, right? What are they doing to prevent people who shouldn't be from boating? You know what I'm talking about? I don't want the Google algorithm to censor me here, but you get what I'm saying. They're doing a lot to make sure that people who shouldn't be, even though Kamala Harris wants them to, from doing things that are not within our rule of law. How's that? Not counting them. You're going to want to hear this. And then specifically, we're going to get a report on what's going on in Georgia. As I said, Glenn Beck, Trish Regan, and our latest roadmap to 270. That's coming up as well. You are not going to want to miss this. That's why I tell you, hit the notification button, subscribe on all platforms, and do me a favor, send it around to 5 or 6 friends of yours. The growth has been phenomenal because of you. Okay. I'm going to bring in Robby Starbuck and talk about what he is doing, because he's exposing the DEI leftist policies of companies and winning. That's the key word here, folks. He's winning. These companies, Coors, Ford, Tractor Supply Company, when he exposes them for what they're doing, they stop and publicly acknowledge it. How is he having the success that he's having, and what can we learn from that? And where does this factor into the election? I'm going to get into it all with him. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you about a huge issue that we should all be prepared for. We know the election's coming. We know a lot of things are coming our way. What we don't know is if we'll ever lose power. It could be for an hour or a day or a week or month or months. Maybe it's a natural disaster. Maybe it's a electrical grid attack. It doesn't matter. I have a Patriot Power Generator 2000X in my house. And if you go to 4patriots.com/Spicer, you can have one too. This will be the best money you ever invest. Why? Because it runs on a solar panel that comes free with it. You don't have to worry about filling it up. You don't have to worry about whether or not the gas station is open or it takes credit cards, because if we get hit by an electrical attack, it may not. You don't have to worry about the smells and the noise. You can bring the Patriot Power Generator 2000X into your house. No smells, no noise. Powers the most powerful things: your refrigerator, tablets, TV, all that stuff. And because it's completely portable, and I mean literally I can lift it up and carry it around, that portable, then you can bring it to a friend or a family member if you need to. You can bring it upstairs. You can bring it to a cookout. I don't really care. But you will be the savior in a time of emergency. Go to 4patriots.com/Spicer and get your Patriot Power Generator now. You do not want to wake up and go, I wish I had listened to Sean. I wish I had done this. This is the smartest move you can make for your family and your own safety. All right. I want to get to Robby Starbuck. We've had him on the show before. He's a former Hollywood producer. He's a filmmaker. He's an activist. And as I said, let me just tell you what the Wall Street Journal said about him. Mr. Starbuck and his whistleblowers are doing companies a favor by warning them of potential lawsuits to come. He is actually having huge success getting these companies to undo these crazy policies. Brown-Forman, Lowe's, Coors, John Deere, Tractor Supply Company, and the list goes on. He's getting results. And all he's asking them to do is, as Bill Belichick would say, do your job. He's saying, stop tilting so far to the left. Stop indoctrinating us and your employees and get back to what you're fundamentally supposed to be doing. So without further ado, I want to bring in the man getting results and what this means for us, what we should be doing for the upcoming debate, all of that. Let's talk about it in the context of this election, Mr. Robby Starbuck. Hey, Robbie, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I want to get into a lot of the work that you're doing, but obviously earlier this week, big debate, a lot of critique of each side of the moderators. I was shocked that culture wasn't brought up as an issue. We had seen, like, a day before the debate, Kamala Harris had this ACLU questionnaire revealed where she talked about wanting to use taxpayer dollars to pay for the transition surgeries of illegals. There's a lot of stuff that's obviously going on in schools, and yet nothing about culture and society in the debate. Was that shocking to you? Or do you think ABC intentionally wanted to keep her away from that?
It wasn't shocking to me at all. I mean, this seems like the setup. If you go do a debate at one of these major networks, it's going to be a pile-on. You know, it's 3-on-1. I don't think that even people who don't like Trump believe that it was an unbiased, debate. I don't think that's the case. You know, what I've always said would be really fun and I think exciting for the American people, and you would get some real questions, would be if you allowed candidates to choose the moderator that asks the questions to their opposing candidate, because then you would at least know that the opposing candidate is going to get questioned on the things that matter to people, right? So, last night looked a whole lot more like Kamala Harris's campaign team came up with the questions. It was basically like, Mr. Trump, why are you so terrible? And then Kamala, what do you think about Mr. Trump being so terrible? I mean, you're not going to get a real substantive debate out of that. It's just a pile on with the hope that Trump's going to snap and say something crazy, which didn't happen. Trump kept his composure pretty well. And I think just, there had to be some natural frustration with the fact that you're facing a 3-on-1 situation.
Yeah, I actually think it was like 100-on-1. It was 3-on-1 on the stage, but you had all those behind the scenes folks at ABC also on his team. Let me ask you this: is somebody, and I want to get into your work, because why I wanted to talk to you today was that you've been very successful, and I think you give us a roadmap as to how we can win. If you were Trump, one of the things that I got to say is he agreed to this. He bought in. Now, he bought in with Biden, just to be clear, right? And then they did the old switcheroo, the push her out and bring her in. But the question I have for you is, what should have been the tactic? Should he have just said, I don't care, I'll debate her anytime, anywhere. It can be ABC, CBS, NBC. Or should he have fought more for rules that made it a little bit more neutral?
I would have fought for rules that made it more neutral, but rules that people, the general public, would think are great. Like what I just said just now, your average American would think that's a wonderful idea, right? I mean, it's very clear debates have been broken for a long time. Now, if I was on Trump's team and I was, asked for advice on sort of what his approach should be, it would start with that. Number one, you've got to set the rules here, okay? Because you just won the last debate. They're the ones who changed out with a candidate that has never received a primary vote in this election and really needs to prove to the American people what they are. And if she decided not to show up to the debates that you offered, what I would have done is I would have shown up, done it myself, and I would have made the entire debate about going and showing the American people what her policy positions had been for many years. And I really explicitly believe, Sean, that this election is going to come down to one very simple question. Are the American people, the majority of them, dumb enough to believe that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have changed their lifetime of far-left radical policy and suddenly become moderates who are pro-border wall, who have guns, they're gun owners, they love guns, and they don't want illegals here anymore, and they hate crime, they were never for defund the police. All of this stuff, suddenly they're making this right-wing shift because they're hoping that enough people are stupid enough to believe that after a lifetime of far left veering into Marxist policy in most cases, they've decided, we're actually super MAGA now and we love patriotism, America rocks. We're talking about the people who did nothing but villainize and demonize the United States of America throughout the BLM riots. As the cities were burning, Walz and his wife were sniffing in the burning rubber and thought that was some beautiful poetic thing. In reality, it was a celebration of the destruction of the America we all love. And you need to hold them accountable for that. So I would have shown up on that stage, whether she was there or not, and I would have made and prosecuted the case that really Kamala Harris is the closest thing to a modern day Marxist. And I would have made the argument of how dangerous that is going to be for our country. And I would have shown people that she is a flip-flopper that you cannot trust. And most importantly, I would have begged Trump, begged him, do not take the bait. It is the number one thing that they are hoping for, is that she's going to be able to get a rise out of you. And it only really happened one time where she was able to get a little bit of a rise out of him. And I think that that's the thing that is going to matter in the next debate. If they do another one, is he's got to just, cancel out what she's saying and prosecute your case. No defense, all offense. Tell the American people who Kamala Harris is and define her with her policies and actions in the past, and make sure you are in an arena where if they're going to fact check anybody, they're going to be fact checking her the same way they were fact checking Trump last night, with a lot of bogus fact checks, might I add. But you need to be in a place where she is going to have to face the music, whether it be via you and there's no fact checks involved, or whether it be that there is an actual fair moderation panel that includes fact checking for all, because Kamala Harris was allowed to lie last night with with impunity. And that is on ABC News. And I think the real loser of last night's debate, again, is the legacy media, who increasingly people do not watch or trust.
Do you think there's a second debate?
I hope there is, because I think there's a case still to prosecute to define Kamala Harris. A lot of people, it's well over 30% of the American people do not know what her policy positions actually are. That is enough to not just swing the election, but make it a landslide. And so if Trump can be the person that defines who Kamala Harris is, we win. Because her policy positions in the past have been absolutely patently absurd. We're talking about something who wants to take money out of hardworking Americans' pockets and pay for illegals to get sex changes, federal prisoners to get sex changes, to adopt things like Tim Walz did in Minnesota, where they put tampons in boys' bathrooms. We're talking about a misuse of funds, of what I would argue is really transnational fraud. And we've seen this year over year from the Democrats. We need to tell the story and define them.
Yeah. I felt like, first of all, I'm intrigued. I hope there is a second debate. I just don't know. I mean, she gets it. She won't do Fox because she's scared. Trump said earlier that he'd be willing to do NBC. I feel like he's walking right back into the same trap again, and they're going to do exactly the same thing. I felt like I give her credit, and I say this because here's what I think her strategy was. She said 5 things, right? She went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, your suit sucks. And then he said, my suit's great. They're made by these tailors and da-da-da-da. And she got him to basically say, whatever the first 5 things I just said were, you basically aren't going to attack, because I'm going to end whatever I say with something like, your hotel smell. And he was like, what are you talking about? I get 5 Michelin star ratings and they're great. And da-da-da-da. And he took the last thing she said. And I think that you could tell that through the prep that she did, she realized whatever the last thing you say to him is the first thing he's going to respond to. So she realized she could get a pass on 1 through 4 or 1 through 5, as long as I end it with something that you will respond to. And she did it every single time, where it was like, boom, 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 boom. Your administration killed more birds than dogs, right? And he would be like, I love birds. And that's where he erred. I think he should have pivoted right back to her every time.
Yeah, the other thing too, for me is he should not agree to an NBC debate unless there is that exception of he gets to choose one of the moderators, and it does not need to be an NBC employee. And they're not going to do that. But that type of fairness is something that your average person understands, especially after this debate, where you say, you know what? Yeah, I'll go on your turf. I'll go to CNN. I'll go to NBC. But there needs to be one moderator who is not a part of this machine. And if the debate does not happen, then at that point, and you have been the one that tried to set these terms, you set up your own event and honestly make it a spectacle. Invite every celebrity that supports Trump. Make it something people want to watch. And more people will probably watch that, even if Kamala doesn't show up. And you will then have the opportunity to define who she is to the American people. Because again, if you watched last night with David Murr or whatever his name is in control, you had, and let's say you don't follow politics really closely. You would have left that debate thinking that she loves guns, that she believes we need to shut the border down, that there are no abortions at 8, 9 months. That just doesn't exist. And again, this is just ignorance of the law in our country. There are many states where you can have abortion all the way through that 9th month. Okay. But the moderators didn't step in and fact check and say, no, Kamala, actually, you're wrong here. They didn't force her to answer the question. She skated out of the question and didn't answer it at all. When Trump turned around and asked, hey, do you support abortion at 9 months at full term? She would not answer it.
And they let her go.
Debate, that wouldn't be possible.
Right. And they let her go. They were like, next question. Hurry. Let's get on to this. All right. I want to move on to your work. Like I said, the overarching thing that I love about it is I get asked all the time when I go to speak to groups, like, what can we be doing? And my answer is, we actually, if we push back, if we expose them in a logical and methodical way, we do win. And we've got to start doing more of it. And that's frankly what you've been doing. And for the people who aren't paying it, who don't know about your work, you've been follow Robbie on Twitter. Go look at what he's done, where he identifies basically leftist policies, DEI policies at major corporations, exposes them, and then they retract them. Okay, so the list is long. Okay, Coors, John Deere, Tractor Supply Company, Brown Forman, Lowe's. Okay, I'll go on. But the Wall Street Journal said this of you. In that sense, this is referring to your work, Mr. Starbuck and his whistleblowers are doing companies a favor by warning them of the potential lawsuits to come. They are also steering companies back to their fundamental mission to focus on increasing shareholder value rather than politics. Let me put this simply, more simply than the Wall Street Journal. Companies should focus on what they do. If they're a service company, focus on the service. If you're a tax service company, do really great things preparing taxes. If you are Coca-Cola, make good beverages. Like, I don't understand where we went off track on this, but let me just walk through kind of where I wanted to get with you. How do you find out about these things? How do you find out that these corporations are adopting these policies?
Well, the employees reach out to us. That's the biggest part of this. Okay, we've got well over 5,000 whistleblowers that have reached out to us. There's some crossover there where people are at the same companies, but they'll send us, what the policies are and kind of what's going on. And these whistleblowers want people to know that these companies have veered dangerously off course. And here's the reality: most of the companies we expose, we will rarely go and highlight a private company, and we really only do that when they take government dollars or there's some sort of weird, crossover where it makes sense. But with public companies, you're talking about companies that have a fiduciary duty to shareholders. So if you're a company that has even a 15% conservative consumer base that comes in your stores regularly or purchases your products regularly or your service, you are doing wrong by your shareholders by adopting these far left policies. And to be clear, the policies we're talking about is many of these companies, I'd say the vast majority in corporate America, have been sponsoring truly outlandishly sexual pride shows. They've been supporting youth transition, so children sex changes, like supporting that whole transition process from puberty blocker to hormones, even double mastectomy coverage, that some of these companies have for children. And they're working with outside groups like the HRC, who, it sounds absurd to call them the Human Rights Campaign.
Which is the Human Rights Campaign, right?
It sounds absurd. It's like, putting a bill in Congress, it's, vote yes if you love Puppies Act, and then inside the bill it says, yeah, we're going to kill puppies. That's basically the equivalent of the Human Rights Campaign being called that. But the HRC has something called the CEI score. A CEI score is basically a social credit system for corporations that if they want 100% score, then they need to do all of these far left policies and shove them into reality within their corporation. So that includes having a concierge for your LGBTQ plus employees, doing a certain number of events for them, and putting the flags up in your office, so on and so forth. And there's all these crazy things. You wouldn't believe it all if you saw it, and we would be here for way too long. But these groups work explicitly with these major corporations. Walt Disney gave the HRC millions of dollars, and they were just at a gala a couple days ago where the HRC president said Donald Trump hates America. So they are supporting that type of rhetoric. And that's something that your conservative consumer for a long time has not been fully aware of. And so our job is take the values of these companies, put it together in a bite-sized form, and inform people on how far left corporate America has veered and how much they hate your values, and then challenge the corporations. Do you want us to continue to walk through your doors? And a couple of these companies, they tested us. They wanted to call a bluff, and it didn't work out because we were a damaging force economically. People stopped going to the stores. They couldn't hold out longer than 3 weeks. In Harley Davidson's case, they tried to stick to their guns with their woke CEO. And as Bloomberg reported, at Sturgis, the largest bicycle rally in the country, maybe the world, where 90% some odd of the bikes there are Harleys, Harley Davidson had to shut down their tents 2 days early because it was such an embarrassing lack of turnout where people, they were at Sturgis, they just would not go to the Harley booth. Okay, it was a ghost town. I posted photos of it, and it was a total embarrassment for them. In fact, it was the Daily Mail. They called this a total rebellion from Harley riders. And so, this turned very quickly for them because we showed these corporations we are a movement that has teeth. We actually do bite if necessary. We don't want to. We just want to fix things. We don't want to destroy anything. We would like to fix American companies and bring them back to former greatness, which looks something like neutrality, where everybody can go there and shop and not feel like their values are being attacked with the very dollars that they spend there.
Yeah, I hate to say this. Like, I don't really care what you do or in your private life, but I don't understand why a company needs to have a flag in my face about somebody's sexuality. I just don't get it. To me, I'm there to buy a good or a service, not to be indoctrinated into a particular lifestyle. So walk us through, how did this all start? What was the first time that somebody brought something like this to your attention?
Well, it probably started before it was first brought to my attention because I had a long time frustration with boycotts on the right. I felt we did a really poor job with them. And a lot of times it was poor targets, poorly timed with no strategy. And so there were these short-term things that play right into the number one PR strategy of corporate PR people, which is just wait for it to blow over. And it did almost every time. And so I had long sort of had this idea of how you would run a successful boycott, right? And so when a person came to me who was a Tractor Supply employee, because they were the first company, I said, you know what, we're going to do this. We're going to put this together. We're going to set up metrics for how we do this and identify companies. And if we're right here and we get Tractor Supply to flip, we are going to do this one by one through corporate America and bring corporate America back to sanity. Because here's the thing, after George Floyd, there was this massive accelerated push to the far left. So the Overton window shifted wildly in terms of what was sort of acceptable and what people considered normal. And so our job is to move it back. Well, the really common sense way to do that within sort of the broader thesis we have for changing things back to normal is you start with the companies that depend on us the most. They depend on the conservative consumer. So that was your Tractor Supply, your John Deere.
And what was their sin? What was their sin? What did they do?
In Tractor Supply's case?
Yeah.
So for that, they did a full reversal. I mean, they reversed on everything.
What was it that got? What was it that started this? Like what grabbed that employee's ire?
Yeah, so they had these, the newest version of the Progress transgender flag in the distribution center in Kentucky. They had all this woke stuff in the office here in Tennessee where their HQ is based, and I'm here in Tennessee. So it's personal to me because I shop at Tractor Supply, and I had no clue that my dollars spent at Tractor Supply helped fund pride events here in my own state where kids were exposed to sexual content. And as to your point earlier, I don't care what adults do, knock yourself out, but once you start sexualizing kids, I'm gonna fight you, okay? I don't care if you happen to be LGBTQ or you're straight or you're a pastor misusing your position. If you sexualize children, I am going to do everything I can to call it out and stop it because it's inappropriate and we have attacked child innocence for too long in this country. And it's time to bring back what makes America great. And that's one of those elements of what makes America a great country was when kids got to be kids, grow up and have a beautiful sort of idyllic American youth. And if we want that to be possible again, we've got to cut this stuff out. So the company was sponsoring these pride events. They were sponsoring centers that are pro-transition for children. They were partnered with a group that was pro-illegal immigration, whose founder stated very clearly that they believed that their job was to stop deportations during a Trump presidency. These are things that are so wildly out of alignment with the customer base of Tractor Supply, it's not even funny. But as we sort of built the story and showed people all of the craziness, because there's much more, people said, you know what? I'm done. I'm not going to give my money to a company that is going to turn around and spend it diametrically opposed to my values. But I'll give Tractor Supply executives credit. They did the foolish turnaround, and because they were first, I know it was extremely hard for them to do because there was a lot of unknown as to what kind of backlash they would receive from Wall Street. But you know what happened after they turned things around? Their stock went up, okay? It went down when we were going after them, went up when they changed their policies. It went viral, story all over the world where people saw a company rejecting wokeness and DEI. And then the table was set, the thesis was proved, and we went one by one through these companies, from them to John Deere, to Harley Davidson, Indian Motorcycle, Polaris, Jack Daniels, their parent company, Lowe's, Ford. You know, we've got many others, Coors just the other day, and we've got a bunch that are ready to be announced very soon. And I think people are going to be very happy with that because we're amping up here. We are building up a larger team even to continue to do this at an even higher scale.
Okay, so this employee comes to you, they tell you all this stuff that they're doing at Tractor Supply Company. You have this plan to do things differently and more effectively. Walk us through the plan.
Well, essentially, you know, you have to eliminate that first problem that we had in previous boycotts where it's like, okay, you know, we can wait this out. Well, you can't wait it out if I'm planning on dropping this information every day, well over a month, and it's all absurd and it's all stuff that people are shocked to learn, right? So we said, you know what? We need to meticulously investigate these companies, not just with our whistleblowers. We're going to go open source. We're going to look at every document they've ever filed as a public company. We're going to look at their investor relations forms. We're going to look at everything that they've ever publicly given money to. Then we're going to go look at their foundations, their 990 forms. We're going to scour through those. Then we're going to look at what the executives have done and see what they're involved with on a personal basis to build a picture for people of how far left the boardrooms have gone. Because while I appreciate we live in America, people on their personal time can go do what they want. If we find a pattern that companies that depend on right-wing consumers are companies that have boardrooms that are filled with the furthest left Democrats, well, we've got a problem, right? And so we identified all this and we built together a strategy where where this would just be a drip, 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 drip on a daily basis. It starts with one big expose, and that typically tends to get a ridiculous number of views. And then everything after that, you get 1 million here, 1 million there, 1 million there. And then there's all of these other influential accounts who take the work we've done and they spread it. And I've been very happy to just say, take whatever I do, spread it however you want, post it wherever you want. I don't need credit. I don't need money. Go do it. I want people to just understand how insane these companies have gone. And it's been very successful. I think that's the reason why companies now understand when I send them an email, I mean business. So if I email them and I say, hey, we've done this investigation, we identified these problems, but we want to make sure we do our story right. So if we're missing anything and there are some changes afoot and you guys are ready to discuss changes or you want us to hold to update this story for changes, we are happy to do so because we love a good positive story. We would rather talk about that and fixing things for the future than go and have to do a month-long campaign where we're identifying all the failures of the past. And that has been very successful. Companies are now responding to that very well because they don't want to, find themselves in the position that some of these other companies have been in where their entire customer base became acutely aware that the companies had gone absolutely absurdly insane.
So you build this dossier and then you say you're going to have this expose. In the case of Tractor Supply or anyone else, are you putting this like on your website or your group, or how do you get it out? Do you find a mainstream media outlet? What's the vehicle to get it out there?
So I generally put it on my X first, but we cross-platform post on, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, all those places, so the videos will all go there. X gets the most content because there's a lot of screenshots we post to from handbooks and flyers and weird stuff that happens at company events and speakers they brought in. Like in the case of, John Deere, they actually had the lady who was the founder and creator of the 1619 Project. They had her come in. This is somebody who's explicitly far left activist, right? And, things like that will kind of keep exclusive to one platform. But, the mainstream media, I will say, has been so incredibly interested in this story. We just had actually just yesterday, the New York Times here at our office, and we had also Bloomberg doing profiles of us, and this is sort of become the norm. We've had amazing coverage all across the board from every major media outlet who can't believe we're as effective as we have been, especially with the small team we have, and we're not powered by some, evil, shadowy source. This is all, I have a lot of subscribers on X who pay $5 a month. They support the campaign we're doing, and we use that to hire researchers. The researchers work on the projects, and we build this all up together. And this is truly a people-led movement to just bring sanity back.
So, okay, let's just keep playing with the Tractor Supply one. So you build this expose. How long does it take them to go, all right, we got to have a conversation? And are they calling you saying, all right, Robbie, uncle, we'll change it, or do they change it and then call you? But where's that pain point for a company, especially them at the beginning?
So it took them about 3 weeks. They were the first one though, so for them, there was a lot of unknown, and they kind of, I think my guess is probably needed to measure internal metrics and kind of see what does this actually mean for us? And I know that we had outreach from many different places, including customer service at a couple of these companies going, look, I wasn't familiar with you before, but now I am because our phone lines have been jammed for, well over a week and people just calling about your videos. And, in one case, they actually said, could you please have them call this other number because it would be a lot easier for us and we could still get our other customer service calls done. But when it comes to executives, I do have a practice that everything's off the record. So I don't typically, or I don't at all really discuss, kind of what happens between the executives. I can just broadly say, within a number of the companies that we have focused stories on, I have had off-the-record conversations with the executives, and the tenor of those is kind of wide-ranging. It can be anywhere from, we disagree, we go through sort of the finer details of why I feel this is not okay and why so many people believe this stuff is not okay. And eventually, in every case, we have a 100% strike rate where 100% of the companies that we have focused in on for stories have changed their policies. So eventually, we get to the right place.
And so when you call them now, when you start that conversation, is it like, oh crap, Robby Starbuck, we gotta, or how? I feel like sometimes it's, that scene like at a restaurant where somebody walks in and they're like, "Hey, do you have a table?" And someone goes, "Do you know who that is?" Is it there's a little delayed sometimes, or do they know who you are now at this point? They've all been kind of conditioned to, if we get an email from this guy, I want to know about it ASAP.
Every single one knew who we were. And I say we because we're a team. Like I know people have given me a lot of the credit, but I have a team here. They're fantastic. They're all private, so they don't really want credit. But it's a team effort, and they know, when we contact them. And I will say this very broadly. I had a conversation this weekend actually with an executive at one of these companies, and we're talking about a massive company that's going to be announcing changes very soon. And they admitted to me, they were like, I got to be honest. When we got that first message from you, we were all kind of freaking out. We thought you were going to drop a video right away, and we thought this was going to be just a disaster for the next month or two. And I said, I appreciate that that's sort of what we've incited in their minds. But the truth is, we're not after clicks. If we're after clicks and just like making money off this operation, things like that, we would just put out videos exposing the companies. We want change. And so if we can go to a great American company, or at least a once great American company, and they're going to change as a byproduct of our campaign to bring back neutrality and normalcy, where everybody just gets to go to work and do their job, what a crazy concept. We're happy to have that outcome. We don't need the clicks. We want the change. We do want them to publicly address the change, though, because I think that's important to the overall momentum of changing the mood in corporate America back to one of adopting a neutral stance. And now you're starting to see some universities do this preemptively, because I think that they're also understanding, not just because of the Supreme Court case that had to do with admissions, but, just the overall environment, that it's done nothing but harm them to get overtly politicized and take political or social positions that are divisive. And so this is becoming sort of an alarming thing, not just among executives, but also among university, at the higher level, the deans and things along those lines, where they're seeing this is really maybe something that is actually a liability for us to get involved with. I think we just need to take a neutral approach. And on the overall, that's something that I think is going to end up being extremely healthy for our country, because, it's no secret I'm very conservative, but I want to see our country united too. People are not going to all agree with me. And if I want my kids to live in a united country, one of the most important elements to that is removing the division from every element of our life, because that's how we got here, is that our workplaces got politicized. Our kids' schools got politicized. Every screen that we have got politicized. And so when it's pummeling you all the time, naturally people are going to get more emotional about it on both sides. And they're going to have stronger feelings, and people get pitted into these corners where I think at the end of the day, you start to get to this point where you can't stand each other. And if we want to get back to kind of what we had in the 90s, where, if you look at Pew polling or Gallup polling, racial harmony was in a great place. People generally got along with each other. We had this kind of like happy-go-lucky spirit in America that, like, if you disagreed, you went like, okay, well, this is America, agree to disagree. And you moved on, and you could still like be a nice person. We're not there anymore. And if we want to get back there, we need to remove this divisive stuff from these different areas of our life, like the workplace and schools and the pillars of culture out there, and just get back to being able to sort of allow each individual to have their belief system and not try to destroy their life for it.
I think what's interesting about what you're doing and the way you've described this is the left wants these corporations and other institutions to tilt towards them, right? They want to do that. You, and frankly, and I agree with you on this, I think we as conservatives generally just want neutral. We're not trying to say you must have this inserted into your company or whatever. We want neutral. I want to go to work. I want to do my job. I want to make a great product or provide a great service for a good wage or whatever, help the company. They want these companies to be a tool in their agenda. And I think that's a very big difference between the sides.
You're absolutely right. I think you identified actually a big reason why, our sales pitch is very successful with executives, because if I was arguing to them, you need to adopt my positions, you need to donate to the groups I donate to, you need to support the candidates I support, we would not be getting nearly the same place, because, frankly, I won't say just as bad, but it would be close to just as bad as what they're doing now. I would argue it's worse what they're doing now because they're supporting communists. But, I think it would be something that's not healthy for our country. Healthy looks something like allowing work to just be work and people not having to worry about the divisive issues of the day while they're on the clock. And, outside of work, you want to be an activist. You want to, talk with your fellow coworker about politics. Like, go knock yourself out. This is America. Do what you want. But at work, you have a job to do. And I think that should be the focus, is providing great service and not bringing any of that stuff into work with you, because ultimately work is not about you. It's about doing a job. And I think that's the most important thing. And a lot of companies have lost sight of that, frankly.
In Ford Motors' letter to you, Jim Farley, the CEO, says that they will stop participating in the human rights campaign Equity equality index rather, and Brown-Forman stated the same thing, that it's going to end its participation in Human Rights Campaign corporate equality index survey. Was that something that you asked for, and explain why that's important?
I don't think I explicitly had to ask for it. I think they've seen my commentary on it, and people are about to see some more of that in a little while. We just got a video of the president there, and I think everybody needs to see it because it makes it explicitly clear what these companies are tying themselves to, and it is absolutely bonkers. But I think they've seen enough of my coverage of it, and these people are following kind of what we're doing very closely, that they know that that's something that is going to be eliciting a positive reaction from my side of things. Because what I've argued is, because HRC is not alone, there's other, sort of far left metrics. And I've just argued they need to get away from any of these metrics or scoring systems when they're pushing you in a direction that is going to overtly politicize your company. And, I want you to just imagine, okay, like the HRC, they advocate for grown men to follow little children, little girls into the bathroom. They advocate for boys to be able to play on girls' teams. They advocate for children to be able to get sex changes. This is a truly radical group, okay? At their gala, again, they said Trump hates America. They framed congressional Republicans the same way. And so, if you're just looking at this from a neutral zone, like eagle eye view of our country, I want you to try to imagine a major corporation aligning themselves to a group on the right who did something equivalent to that. It would never, you and I know, would never happen, Sean. It would never, ever, ever happen. And if it did, there would be hell to pay for it. But the right has sort of sat by. And this goes to a very important point, Sean. We have made one very big mistake on the right. The Republican Party has made one colossal, hopefully not fatal, but possibly fatal mistake over the past decade and a half. And it's adopting the idea, celebrating the idea that we should be a silent majority, or that we are a silent majority. That is a shameful thing to be, especially, for myself. My family comes from Cuba, where they lost everything to communists. And the truth is, a big reason that happened is a lot of people sat around silently. They thought they were safe. And the truth is, if you love your country, being silent is not an option. In fact, there was a lawmaker in Athens way back, in history called Solon. And he actually made it a law that it was illegal to shirk your responsibility to come and address controversy that had to do with the times in the state. You had to have an opinion. You could not just be silent and sit by and do nothing. You had a responsibility to your countrymen, to your country, to voice what you thought. Whether you agreed with them or disagreed with them, it didn't matter. Everybody's voice needed to be at the table. And while maybe that's a little extreme for a country like ours, I truly do believe that being a silent majority is what led us to this point in time, where you have a candidate for president in Kamala Harris, who is essentially a New Age Marxist, where really the only thing that functionally changes is in the New Age communist system, you don't need to take over the means of production because the left-wing politicians have figured out that optically that doesn't look very good. So instead, they realized, you need something actually that's quite a bit simpler. You need control of the minds of the executives that run the means of production. And if you don't believe that the Democratic Party has established some version of that already, look no further than big tech, where they absolutely own them. But they don't own them on paper, but those companies do their bidding. And so that's the reality we live in. And if we want to get out of it, the silent majority needs to just say, you know what? We're not silent anymore. We are going to speak up. This group of radicals, very small group who are very loud, are no longer going to control the conversation. They are no longer going to dictate the terms under which we all live.
Okay, I just want to end this kind of by the way I began this. When I get asked at a group, what do we need to be doing? And I point to you, is that a template? Do I say, speak up, demand action? I mean, what is it that you want the message to be, to say, hey, I love what you're doing. I love the success that you're having. What can I do in my community? What's your answer?
Everybody has a different role to play. So people need to identify their strengths. God's given us all different gifts, and I'm a big believer in that. And it's our job to identify what they are and put them into play. But, I always tell people, focus on your home, okay? Because here's the reality of our country. If we look at it again, eagle eye view, and we're just looking down at it, and each individual takes responsibility in their community to organize the people they know around the issues that need protection in their community, because every community is different. In Springfield, Ohio right now, it's the fact that they are being absolutely invaded by these Haitian migrants, and that it's functionally changing the culture of where they live. We'll engage on that issue. Show up to the commission meetings. Show up to your politicians. politicians and address what needs to change. Go and be a part of the primary process. Elect new people if the ones who are in there now are not doing their job. You need to get video and get them out to the, sort of news aggregators out there and make sure that the word gets out about what's happening in your community. Reach out, build a coalition of people, because if everybody does that across our country and takes responsibility for their local area and stops waiting for a politician to save us and instead says, you know what, we're going to take on the spirit of our founders and say we, the people, have a responsibility to protect where we live, then pretty soon from that eagle eye view, you look down and you realize, well, that area is protected by this little bubble of people. That area is protected by this little bubble of people. And you realize it's all kind of interconnected. And if everybody does that and plays their part, our whole country's protected. We can protect ourselves if we stop waiting for some hero to save us. I want Trump in office. Make no mistake. The man can do so much good for this country. But whether he gets in or does not get in, we all have a job to do. We cannot sit around waiting for somebody else to save us.
Beautiful way to end this. Robbie, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it.
You bet. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Robbie. As I said, big week next week. The road to 270. We're updating it. Latest polling. How does the debate affect it? We're going to be doing that on Wednesday. On Monday, we're talking about what America First Legal, Stephen Miller's organization, is doing to make sure that our elections are only among those who are supposed to be casting votes. Trish Regan will be here. Glenn Beck will be here. It's going to be a killer week. You do not want to miss it. Hit that notification button. Subscribe on all platforms. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.